Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
What is going on, everybody? I go by RB, and this is Philly Take with RB. Like always, if you guys are enjoying the content of the channel, be sure to smash that like button, hit that subscribe if you're new, and hit that notification bell so you're instantly notified whenever I upload or go live. And today we are back discussing some Philadelphia 76ers, and we got something to talk about, and that is Chris Paul. Well, I made a video months back discussing if the Sixers should go out and trade for Chris Paul. At that time, this was before the pandemic, and the OKC Thunder were impressing a lot of people, but still at that time I said no, majority no, because of the contract situation, and I had to see more. Well, Chris Paul led them to a Game 7 in the first round with a team that wasn't even supposed to be in the playoffs. He was obviously that emerged leader as he's always been, but he really stepped it up and was able to run that offense with a lot of pick and rolls. And Chris Paul really got a lot of respect around the league. I understand in Game 7 he kind of crunched up a little bit in the last couple minutes, but overall Chris Paul had a great season. He is 35 years old. One of the greats. He's obviously a future Hall of Fame point guard. He's never won a championship, which is crazy to me. I know they vetoed that trade years back when he was trying to go to the Lakers, but anyway, Chris Paul deserves a chance at getting a championship, and we are here to talk about whether Chris Paul should even be an interest for the Philadelphia 76ers. Let me start by saying this. Earlier this week, there was a report that came out. There was actually a podcast and then a report which was talking about a potential Chris Paul trade with the Thunder. Even yesterday, I saw how Woj talked about how with decreased revenues throughout the league, the OKC Thunder are probably going to end up parting with some of their veterans like Chris Paul, like Steven Adams, because they're going completely young, which is what they tried to do this season when they accumulated all those picks for Paul George. They never expected this. Honestly, they were trying to get out of the Chris Paul contract, and I can't believe how far they actually made it. I don't think they could either, but they're definitely going to try to get rid of Chris Paul, in my opinion. They're trying to go completely young, strike while they can, and have an amazing team years down the road, because they already showed a lot of potential. They need those last couple pieces. But anyway, on the podcast with Brian Windhorst and Royce Young, they were talking about it, and Royce Young said that the three likely destinations for Chris Paul would be the Knicks, the Sixers, and the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, in terms of the Sixers, we will first talk about Chris Paul and what he would bring to the Sixers. He would absolutely be able to come in here with whatever coach comes in and run this offense. We would see a lot more pick and rolls, which or at least I feel like we tend to get away from. Chris Paul would demand the best out of Ben Simmons. He would demand Joel Embiid to be a force down low in the paint. And any other guys that we bring in would just have that level of respect in the locker room for Chris Paul, because he is that leader. He is a leader. On the other hand, Chris Paul is 35. He's not getting any younger, and he's still in the midst of a terrible contract, which does have another 2 years on it of him getting paid $40 million plus. So Chris Paul is definitely an interesting story. In terms of talent, would I love Chris Paul on this team? Absolutely. He would bring so much to this offense, and he would just be consistent, you know? He's not the greatest shooter in the world, but sometimes he doesn't have to be. He's able to run an offense, get to the rack. Even though he's a little bit undersized, he's able to get to the rack, find the open shooters, and he just plays very swift and just very compact, and I love Chris Paul's game. And he even showed me a lot, hitting some big shots late in the playoffs, outside of Game 7, obviously, but Chris Paul would absolutely be an upgrade in terms of our point guard position, and I would love to see him here. Now, we will talk about if it is possible. This is where it gets tricky. Like I said, Chris Paul has 2 years left on his deal. He's getting paid $41 million, I think, next year, and then almost $45 in his final year of his contract. That's why Houston tried to get rid of him, in addition to the whole beef with James Harden. But they got out of that contract, and OKC is probably going to try to get out of it as well, a guy who's been in the league 14 years. So, in terms of a Chris Paul trade with the Philadelphia 76ers, knowing that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are untouchable, I will tell you, this trade would have to be catered and centered around Tobias Harris or Al Horford. Now, Tobias Harris, we know, is making about $35 a year, which will up to $37, $39 million a year. In a few years, he has 4 years left on his contract. Al Horford, on the other hand, has 3 years left on his contract. He's getting paid around, I think, $27 to $29 million, and that adjusts a little bit each year. But the trade would absolutely have to be centered around one of those two pieces, because the salaries in an NBA trade have to pretty much match up. If we were to go with actually, let me say, would the OKC Thunder even be interested in either one of those guys? I cannot say I'm sure on that. Like I said, they're trying to go absolutely, completely young. They have a lot of upside, and they have a ton of draft picks coming up in the next couple of years. So I don't know if they would want an Al Horford to come in at 34 years old and be their starting center, if they were to part with Steven Adams, or even be a backup center for that much money, because we know the pain that inflicts in us. In terms of Tobias Harris, sure, Tobias would probably be a nice veteran to bring alongside those young pieces and help run that offense. Sure, I think he would be. But in terms of the salary, do they think that Tobias is capable of being that max player? Maybe the coach they bring in can get the best out of him. Who knows? But I don't know. After seeing what they saw throughout this playoff run, I'm not sure if they really believe that. So I think that's one point to keep in mind. In addition, Chris Paul, we know the Sixers have a lot of trouble with these contracts right now, and we're looking to move at least one or both of Tobias and Al this offseason. If we bring Chris Paul in here and he's not able to get it going, maybe he regresses a little bit, the coach can't get things going, whoever we bring in, well, we're paying a guy now above $40 million to be in here, and it's just another one of those terrible contracts. We know Chris Paul is not worth $40 million, and that we're going to have to find a way to operate that. You know what I mean? And in my opinion, the Sixers would have to get rid of both of Tobias and Al to bring in Chris Paul. And here's why. We heard Elton Brand talk about complimenting Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid better. Yes, Chris Paul helps this team. He will help run this offense. He will dominate, and he will be an absolute gem to this offense. But we still need cap space to go out and get shooters. That is our biggest issue. We need shooting. So if you retain, say, a guy like Al Horford and you bring Chris Paul in here, well, now, we still have 4 guys that we're allocating pretty much big max contracts to, and we're really not going to have enough cap space to go out and get one of these top free agent shooters on the market. It's just not going to happen unless we go ahead and make another trade, but you get into all that, all the little intricacies. Look, man, I think it's going to be actually tough for us to even pull off a trade for this. The OKC Thunder would probably want their 21st pick back. If you don't know, we have the OKC 21st pick in this draft because they helped us get it by doing so good in this season. They'd probably want that back. If they were to take Al Horford, we'd probably have to throw in another contract to kind of complement it better, like a Josh Richardson. Do they want him? Maybe. I don't know. We'd probably have to throw in maybe a second-round pick or a future pick or something like that. We'd probably have to throw in Matisse Thybulle because I could definitely see the Thunder being intrigued by a young, enticing defender to throw in with all those guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Lou Dort and Dennis Schroeder and all those guys that they have on the come up along with their new draft picks. They would absolutely covet Matisse Thybulle. They might ask for Zaire Smith. He could potentially be in a deal. Do they think they could revamp his career? How about Shake Milton, another young guard? I know they're guard heavy. They're trying to get some forwards and a nice young big man for the future. Overall, I will say that this would definitely be a very detailed offense with Chris Paul, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid. But at the end of the day, with where Chris Paul is at in his career, it's almost like we would be ready to have to win this next year or two, and I just don't know if that is the case unless we get a ton of shooting around those guys. Definitely interesting to see what happens. Do I think it's going to happen? I would probably lean towards the side of no at this point. But if we can work out the numbers, again, we got to get our front office worked out and everything. If we could find a way around the numbers, move some of the big contracts, and find a way to bring Chris Paul in here for a year and have a championship-ready team, well, I would not mind that at all. I love Chris Paul, the player. I think he deserves a ring, and I hope he gets a chance to get it, and even here. But it's going to be a very, very tall task. You guys give me your thoughts down below. What do you think about this situation? Should the Sixers end up trading or at least try to trade for Chris Paul? Do you think it would be possible in terms of all the numbers? Give me all your thoughts down below in the comment section. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.